Hey everyone, it's Laura here for ModaScrap, and in today's video I'm going to share with you how to create a cute birthday card using products from the Spring 2020 release. Before moving on to the tutorial, I wanted to show you some of the products that I used today. These are all part of the Spring 2020 release, and the first one here is called Postage Hugs. This has a set of matching dies and it's also meant to coordinate with another range of stamp sets, which include the one that I'm showing right now. This is called Postage Hugs, and as you can see, the circle and rectangle sentiments in the Postage Hugs stamp set fit perfectly with the postage stamp and scalloped circle images in the Postage Beads stamp set. And also the style of the sentiment banner matches the style of the Postage Bead stamp set so that you can use them together. Another stamp set that matches with the Postage Beads is the Postage Celebrate stamp set, which I used for today's card as well. And then I used papers from the Spring Flowers collection, which is a really gorgeous paper pad. It's available in a 6x6 inches version and in a 12x12 version too. And it features a print texture that looks like canvas and it's absolutely beautiful. I started by picking one of the designs from the 6x6 Spring Flower collection and I trimmed it to the size of my card base, which is 4¼ by 5½ inches. I then cut 2 more panels for my card front and I used the second largest die in the Dashing Rectangles die set. I chose the pastel pink paper by ModaScrap and I also die cut some white paper, also by ModaScrap, because I'm going to create my own pattern paper. For that I'm using stamps from the Postage Celebrate stamp set and I am arranging them in my Misty, sort of at random orientations and in a random pattern, and I'm going to stamp them with Memento ink in the color London Fog. This is a grey ink, so the look will be a little bit more subtle than if I went in directly with black ink. I'm going to stamp the images a couple of times so that I get a nice and crisp impression. I'm going to clean off my stamps with a microfiber cloth and then I'm going to arrange them again on my paper, again changing the orientation and the position of the images so that I get a pattern paper effect. Another thing that contributes to this true pattern paper look, if you will, is to have some of the images hang off the sides of your paper, because it's going to look like you cut it or you trimmed it off a larger sheet. I'm going to repeat the same steps and stamp the images until I fill up the entire panel. And then I can move on and work on the image that will be the focal image for my card. For that I used images from the Postage Hugs stamp set as well as from the Postage New Baby stamp set, from which I took the little ribbon. This time around I stamped my images with Memento Tuxedo black ink because I wanted a little bit more attention to be drawn towards these images, so I stamped them in a darker ink compared to the images that I have on my DIY pattern paper. The paper that I used is again ModaScrap Woodstock white paper, and for the coloring today I decided to use my Prismacolor pencils. I chose the French grey colors and I started with the 90% French grey Prismacolor pencil and I laid it down in the shadow areas. And then I'm going to blend it out towards the highlights with progressively lighter pencils. I'm shading the image as if my light is on the top right of the screen so that the darker areas are on the bottom left of the image, and I'm also adding a little bit of a cast shadow under the nose of the koala bear so that it will look like the nose is sticking out. With Prismacolor pencils I like to work in layers and I don't apply a lot of pressure, especially on the first couple of layers. I use small circular motions and this is how I blend my different colors together. And then I add a little bit more pressure just with my last layer to make the colors look a little bit smoother, but you could also again going with a lighter pressure and have more texture to have more of a romantic feel, I guess, on your images. It's totally up to you. Because I'm creating a birthday card for a girl, I decided to color the ribbon with pink colors. I tried to pick a palette that would match as closely as possible the pastel pink paper that I have on my card front. I'm using a white pencil to go over the highlight areas to lighten them up and create enough contrast between my shadows and my highlights. And in a little bit I will also be adding a bit of a darker color for my shadows, because with the palette that I have been using so far, I felt I wasn't achieving enough contrast and enough depth in my image. Again, using multiple layers and a light hand to build up the color intensity. And then another thing that I like to do when I color with my Prismacolor pencils, and you'll see me do that in a little bit, is to come back with a very sharp black Prismacolor pencil and go over the lines that were dulled down a little bit by my Prismacolors. And I always do this as the last step, and I make sure that my black pencil is really sharp. I then used my EK Success Cutter B scissors to trim out the images. These are pretty small and not too intricate, so cutting them out is pretty easy and straightforward. And to get a nice and smooth cut, I keep my scissors still and I move the paper with my left hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm holding the scissors with my right hand. At this point, I decided that I wanted to create a tag and use that as a focal point for my images, and I wanted to have the tag be the same color as my background, so the pattern paper you see on screen right now. The issue is that the scraps that I had from trimming my background weren't big enough for my tag stamp set, so what I did is I took a rectangle die that was smaller than the one that I used to cut my polka dot and custom pattern paper panels, and I trimmed off a bit from the center of my card background. As you can see, once I glue everything together, nobody will see that the center is missing, but I can use that to create my tag now. So I picked this image from the Postage Beads stamp set and I stamped it with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and then I used the coordinating dies to die cut it out. I can put aside the rest of the scrap design paper for another project, and then I moved on and created yet another element for my focal area. I stamped this scalloped circle on the solid side of my pastel pink paper pad, and then I used again the coordinating dies to die cut it out. It's really easy to line up these dies because the central circle has some little squiggles that you can line up with your die so that your die cutting will be nice and precise. And here is the shape. I think it's really quirky and fun. Next, I used the smallest die in the Dashing Circle set to cut some white paper, and I'm going to layer that with my scalloped circle, and I will place my sweet koala bear in the center of that circle. The last element I needed for my card is a sentiment, and for that I'm using the banner stamps as well as the greeting stamps from the Postage Celebrate set. I'm stamping them on white cardstock using Memento Tuxedo black ink, and then I'm going to cut them out with my scissors. I used the larger banner for the Happy Birthday sentiment and then the smaller one for the Celebrate and Surprise sentiments. For my DIY pattern paper panel, I wanted to create sort of a pointy edge at the bottom, almost like a triangular shape at the lower portion of this panel. So I used the light pencil to kind of pencil in the shape to make sure that it looked nice and it was the way I wanted it. And then I used my guillotine trimmer to trim off the lower portion. I cut right along the pencil line so that I didn't have to erase anything afterwards, and then I moved on and started assembling my card. I adhered this asymmetric banner panel, if you will, on my polka dot pastel pink paper, and then I glued down my focal area. I started with the tag that I overlapped with the pointy bit of that DIY pattern paper panel, and then I adhered everything on my background. I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive because this gives me a little bit of wiggle room to move things in place and get my positioning correct, or at least the way I want it. As you can see, nobody will ever know looking at this card that the center of that background panel was cut off, so that's a nice trick for you if you need more pattern paper and you don't have enough. I layered my circle and my scalloped circle, and then I adhered this adorable little koala bear with her lovely ribbon right in the center of the panel. I glued that down onto my tag, and then I sort of scattered the sentiment banners around that focal area. I made sure to change sort of the position and the angle of the banners to create a little bit more interest on the panel. And then, because the top of the card felt a little bit empty, so the design is quite bottom heavy, I decided to add a few embellishments, and I picked some pink crystals which happened to match really nicely with the color of my pattern paper, the pastel pink that I have there at the bottom with the polka dots. I glued the embellishments down with my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and a pick-me-up tool, and then I created the card base. I used some heavyweight white cardstock that I cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and folded at 5 1/2 inches so that I have a top folding A2 card base. I used a tape runner to adhere the card front to the card base, and that finished off my card for today. And here you can see a close-up of the final result. I think this card turned out really cute. It's super easy to make, there isn't a lot of coloring to be done, and it's absolutely adorable. And that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I inspired you to create with the Spring 2020 release by ModaScrap. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for more card making and paper crafting inspiration. Thank you all so much for stopping by, and have a great day.